Well, just random choice, to be honest. It really was. What happened was, because I'm from England, Brexit was announced, and that was very difficult for a lot of people in England to accept that that was going to happen, that we were going to leave the EU. And at that point in my life as well, I'd gone around the country, God no, just too many times for me to be yet again sat behind the steering wheel of my car on the motorway thinking, I'm doing this trip again and again and again, for one gig to the next and the next and the next. And, you know, my work was around the country a lot. And I thought, there's got to be more to life than this. And not to say that I hated or had any, you know, begrudging feeling against the music that I was involved in, but I felt like I really wanted to stretch out because I was just seemed to be labelled into jazz and a certain type of jazz music as a saxophone player. And I just was busting to wanting to do something else. I just wanted to explore music. So Brexit happened, and I thought, oh, I'm out of here, man. You know, I'm out of it. I got a Dutch passport, and I left, and it was very scary for me. But then I thought to myself, well, where do I want to go? And I literally went on Google Maps, looked at our side of Europe, Europe, not Eastern Europe, but Europe, Western Europe.
The closest bit to where you were at the time.
Yeah, the most close. Yeah, actually, it's true. The most closest bit where I can travel back to see my family, you know. And so I just went, I'm going to go there because it's halfway in between Spain and it's on the Mediterranean. And that was it. I packed a bag and I just came here. And I got in my car and I drove down here and the rest is history, literally.
This was about 2016. Was it at the time of the Brexit vote or the Brexit announcement?
It was the announcement that that we're leaving Europe. So
okay.
That was 2016. It took me about 6 months to prepare everything to come here. And so I think it was 17 when I arrived.
Right. So, I mean, what was the whole point of that exercise anyway? I mean, it was just a futile exercise in ego massaging the ruling party at the time, or still to this day, the ruling party in the UK. It seems to have caused more harm than good and more division than
I know.
Bringing things together. Maybe that was the whole point. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. It's just
Tories are arseholes. I think we could agree on this.
Oh well, there we go. We've broken the ice on that. You know, we break the ice. Yeah, I mean, you know, Cameron, he had a bill to pay from the EU, and it was a lot. He didn't want to dip into the Treasury. And so he put the vote of whether they should leave or not to the people. And then Boris spun it out of control, gave him too many promises, and then there was no realistic foresight on what would happen. And they just went along with his notion thinking, yeah, this will get us elected again and this, that and the other. So, and it was just a big risk at the people's vote, of which they knew nothing about politically, and just went on spin, and then the worst happened, basically. That's what happened. That it's thanks to Cameron.
Well, now you've seen the kind of tip of the iceberg, right? How things are in the UK. You were there fairly recently, and I was there for a good bit last year as well. And yeah, it was just a bit of a disaster, really. And you know, to be mild.
Yeah. It's sad. It's upsetting. Yeah.
Yeah, you were speaking about getting a Dutch passport then, so you have Dutch parentage or through your grandparents? What's the connection there?
Yeah. I mean, my mum's English, my dad's Dutch. And so I was born in England, but at the age of 5, I was raised in Holland. And then at the age of 12, they came back to England. And I was like, hang on a minute, what? I've just been reading to learn and write Dutch, and now I've got to start all over again in English. And I was like, do I get any say in this? No, right, here we go. You know,
get in the car. You know, did you told her?
It was a culture shock. It was a culture shock. But through that culture shock, you know, I rebelled, obviously, as a teenage boy. And I got myself into a lot of trouble when I started that English school, that school in England. But I knew I had to calm down. I had to focus all that energy and that whatever it was,
teenage angst.
Yeah, angst and confusion about everything. So my dad had a clarinet, and I went, all right, let me play that. And he was like, no, you're not going to play that because you can't. And I was like, what? And I had to beg my dad for months to give me one lesson on the clarinet. And I think it was the reverse psychology that he was doing to me was actually my first music lesson.
All right. How old were you about this time when you picked up this? So it was a clarinet you picked up first?
Yeah, I was 14.
And was it an instant match, or was it it's not the easiest thing to pick up and just start playing, right?
No, and I didn't pick it up and just start playing it either. That first lesson I had with my dad, he sat me down on a chair, told me how to hold it, told me what to do with my mouth, and told me to play one note, an E. And I was like, "It's more than this,"
It's not very sexy, You look, you're waiting for the magic to happen. Russ, I imagine as a teenager,
Well, yeah, you want more. You want more than just
these expectations, right?
Yeah.
You want to get to the end result without doing the bit in the middle.
That's it. Yeah. You want to kick the ball and put it in the goal at the same time. And so, no, but the biggest and most fundamental music lesson that he ever taught me was that he played the note first. Right, and he played the note first, and then he gave it to me, and he went, right, play that note. And then I was just about to play it. He pulled the instrument away from me, and when he pulled the instrument away from me, he went, no, you're not playing the note. And I went, what do you mean? You just told me to play the note, and we're trying to play it. No, you're not playing the note. No, look how I do it. And then I listened and I looked at how he did it. Gives it me again. Try it again. Pulls the instrument away from me. That happened a few times, and then he said, no, this is how you play a note. You hear it, you feel it, then you play it. And then he played the note again, gave it to me, and then he went, no, stop. Go upstairs for 1 hour. 1 hour, practice that one note, hear it, feel it, play it. And you come back downstairs, and if I can feel that you're playing that note, I'll give you another note. And that was it. That was it for me.
Did your dad come from a musical background, like in his family, or was your dad quite? Your dad still plays?
He doesn't play anymore. But yeah, my dad was on the stage at the age of 3.5.
Wow.
1940. Occupied Holland, and it was a cabaret act that my grandfather started. My grandfather was one of the first well-known pop musicians of the day in 1930s, at the time when the pressing of big glass vinyls were being first made, and he did many recordings, released a lot of music. And my dad came along at the age of 3.5. He had him on the stage with him, with his sister. So it was a family act, a cabaret act, singing songs, playing accordion, dancing. And then when the war broke out, Second World War broke out, they were working everywhere because you had to, just for bread, just for a meal, a roof over your head. They were working everywhere all the time throughout the war. And they were playing in front of the Germans one night, the French the next night, the English the next night, and then the Americans, came towards the end. And it was that was their life. But what my granddad did was that he would overhear certain Gestapo officers talking when they were playing in front of the Germans, and so he kind of acted like a spy and relayed that information back to the goodies, and so it kind of worked like that. And they were found out, they were caught. He was caught 2 days before the end of the war, and they spent the last 2 days in a big cattle freight train. That was it. That was empty, and they hid in there for 2 days. Ended up in the north of Holland in Groningen on the last day of the war, and they survived. They made it. And so my dad was a musician from the age of 3.5, and then continued right up until I think it was the late 60s, because he saw the whole invent of the radio, how it changed the industry of the cabaret scene. And then the TV came along, and he got on TV with certain people and, you know, doing his thing. And then it just got out of hand. You know, the whole scene changed. So he had to change himself.
It's a great story, man. One of the things you mentioned there when we were talking about yourself as a teenager when you first picked it up, were you into music as a teenager at that point anyway? Was that something you were talking about records or listening to the radio? Was that something you were into at the time yourself?
I've always been very sensitive to music. Always. Some of my earliest memories of music are being a toddler, walking down in the morning into the living room when I'm like 3 years old. And my dad's there listening to Mingus, you know, or Count Basie really loud, or Stan Kenton used to frighten the shit out of me. And I used to walk into the living room, this little toddler walking into the living room, wanting to sit with my dad and read a book about dinosaurs or whatever. And this music would be playing, and I'd stand there and I'd be so scared. It was so horrific. It was horrific for me. I remember Mingus used to frighten the shit out of me. I used to run out. I couldn't walk back into the living room. And then my dad bought me one day a vinyl. Around about the same time, bought me a vinyl, and it was the London Symphony Orchestra playing all the hits of movies of that time, like 1978, 1979. And it was John Williams' music of Superman. It was Star Trek. It was Blake Seven, Wonder Woman. You know, all those classics, Hulk, and it was all symphonic music, and I used to listen to it. But my mum used to take me to school and back, and I used to be singing the counterlines that were going on in the music, in this classical music, the film music that I was hearing, and I'd always been really passionate about music ever since then, really, because it moved me, and I was very sensitive to it, and so it was always a big part of what I had to feed myself with from a very young age. And then I discovered that I should do it, you know, when I was about 14. I'd give it a go, you know. It was either that or the army.
Well, I think you maybe got the right choice there.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes I think if you would become a musician in the army, I might be a bit better off.
Well, these two things are kind of polar opposites. Do you want to be a well-disciplined musician, or would you rather be a bit more of, as to use a bit of a stereotype about musicians, or artists were a bit more flexible or easygoing or less structured in some respects? As if you were in the army, right? You know, you would be the opposite. You would be your shoes would be shinier for a start, I imagine. They'd
be shinier, I'm sure, but I like that David Bowie quote. I don't actually know it word by word, but I mean, it's like what David Bowie says, basically. He says, artists are dysfunctional. They are. And I believe that. They have to be to a certain extent. That's an artist, though. There's a difference between an instrumentalist and an artist. You know, or a musician. Mm-hmm. I like to think of him as a musician, and an artist is a musician. And then we got a musician who's an instrumentalist, and I think a musician sees their instrument as a tool to the art. It's just a tool to the art. And they're the creative sort of thinking, you know, musicians. Whereas an instrumentalist it's about the instrument. It's about, you know, and there's an art to that as well. But it's the difference between the creativity, the full extent of one's creativity of where you want to stretch that, as opposed to doing something really, really right.
David Bowie had his finger on the pulse in many different ways.
Mm. And so, yeah, and I think to be creative, you've got to be dysfunctional. You've got to set yourself apart from a group mentality. You've got to be an independent thinker. I think, you not got to be afraid to just be who you are, warts and all, because it's from the mistakes that you discover yourselves in as well.
True.
Yeah.
Tell us about that transition then from your early days of playing that E note for the next steps through your musical career then, or how did you where did it take you?
Well, I mean, because my dad's a jazz fanatic. He just had loads and loads of vinyls, and that's all over. That's what I was brought up on with him, just jazz music.
I mean, this was a thing for many kids of our generation. I would say I'm 50. I have to think how old I'm. 53. So, but that's where you kind of your formative years were, going through your parents' record collection or your dad's records, right? You would go and see what these covers were all about, or these kind of hairstyles and the fashions of the time and all that. You put these images and sounds together.
I know, right? How lucky have we been? I know. Yeah, I mean, it was the 70s, the 80s, so it was very much jazz, and funk, and that beautiful golden Quincy Jones era as well, and yeah, I mean, and Miles Davis, when Miles Davis came out with, Tutu, for instance, it's that's where I've been brought up with it, but I didn't like it. And I knew I liked some of it, but I didn't like it. It was just bullshit to me. It was just, why is everyone playing it all at the same time? It really was like that. And I was just, it's too much. It's too much all the time. And so
I think this is a common thing for many people, though, to be honest with you.
Jazz
does have that effect.
Mm.
And maybe even personally speaking, you need to find your own likes and dislikes in jazz. It's taken me quite a while to do that, but through experimentation or following people like yourself and see what you're playing or listening to, you're like, oh, this is not bad, actually. It's a bit more accessible, for choice of a better word.
Yeah, and because of that, the accessibility of it, I immediately... My dad said, hey, listen to these people. And one of them was Benny Goodman, clarinet player Benny Goodman. And he plays very melodically, very groovy, very bouncy, very... it has a 1930s stomp feel, swing stomp feel to his phrasing. And he's a fantastic clarinetist, classically trained as well. And, he was fantastic, Benny Goodman. And I liked the groove of the music that he was playing. I liked the groove. It was live and it was melodic. And so I got really into that. And then when I moved on to the saxophone, which was about a year later, I discovered Stan Getz, who, talking about accessibility of the music, Stan Getz is the most melodic player on the instrument and also the most heartfelt, well, not the most heartfelt, but one of the most heartfelt, sincerest, just saxophone sounds you can get. He's so close to the voice. It's like listening, he sings through the instrument. And I became fascinated, absolutely fascinated in the fact that that instrument can make all those different colours and sounds and emotions. And his playing connected with me, and I just had this burning desire to want to try and get somewhere, anywhere near that, understanding the instrument in that way, and music through that way, and myself through that way. And then when I was 17, I went to Leeds College of Music for 3 years, got my diploma, practiced my arse off. When I was 20, I got to the Guildhall School of Music and Drama from like the master's sort of thing for a year. And then that's it. When I was 21, I was out in the big wide world. But the thing is, when I was in the Guildhall, I won the BBC Soloist Award, that national BBC Soloist Award of the year. I won that. And then I was also given the baton to teach in summer schools where, like, everybody else who was teaching there was a good 20 years older than me, 15, 20 years old. And I was finding myself being really pushed in at the deep end, working with people who are very much more experienced than me in London. Whereas all my other peers were sort of having, doing the function gigs and stuff like that. I was sort of working a lot with people that were a lot higher than me, and in that realm. And then when I was 25, I got a position as a professor at Trinity College of Music on the jazz department, where I worked there for 8 years, and it just escalated really. And I was playing with a lot of really heavy players like Kenny Wheeler. Took me under his wing a little bit, and I got an opportunity to play with so many wonderful, like, legends, and so it just kind of escalated really. And it's interesting then leaving.
Would you describe your experience at that time as or in that field as quite a competitive field? The world of the academic musician, is that how you would describe it?
Oh, that's an interesting.
Or the teaching world?
Of what, working in academia?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course. There's competition in everything. Yeah, I mean, when I was working at Trinity, I knew that it was a yearly contract. So every year your contract was renewed. So when it came up to the academic year back then, it was, you're sort of thinking, I hope, am I still here in September? And so, but yeah, and towards the end, after 8 years, I mean, I'd had enough after 8 years, to be honest. It's a long stretch working in, one college. There was, I did feel the competition breathing down my back. I really did. And the politics gets
a bit, yeah, a bit gnarly at times.
Yeah. And so, but I sort of stepped away from it. Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to young up and coming musicians then, as they would come through the doors of the college? What advice would I give? Yeah, I'm sure they're all at a particularly high level, right? To get to music school. But what kind of real life experience would you give them? A lot of them might be a wee bit wet behind the ears.
What advice would I give to them? Now.
Now or then.
No. I mean, well, that's the difference. Then was a different story to now. You've got a different breed of generation now. Now, you're shit. Accept it. Don't fight what your teachers are telling you. You're shit. You've got to get a lot better than you are, and just bite that bullet and rinse yourself of your ego. That's how you're going to learn.
Leave that at the door, yeah.
Leave that at the door. You're shit. Accept that you're shit and just be stupid, because it's easy to ask questions when you're stupid. That's the best advice I could give any student going to college now. Back then, different story.
What would you say the changes then between now and then that's made you change that advice? Well,
there's a difference between the students that I was teaching back then in the mentality and the social conforms. It's a different generation. Now, there's I don't know. I mean, I don't like to generalize at the same time, but what I do see is a lot of this wokeness. It's a far left liberalism that's occurred and spun out of control over what seems to be the past 10 years now. And it's, I don't know. I'm no expert on this, but to me, it just appears to be like this generation that seems to have been sort of mollycoddled into a false sense of security, and they have these expectations of the world now with finger pointing and blaming everything, and you can't offend anymore. You're not allowed to offend anymore, and everything is taken as offence. And so we have this cancel culture that's bred out of that, which I find to be very, very dangerous thing, especially in education, because this happens in education now, in higher education. We got to please the students, so don't offend them because they're our income. It's like that.
That's it in a nutshell. Income.
Yeah. Oh,
it's a money making business as well. You know?
It's a money making.
Yeah.
It's a capitalizing thing. So it's bullshit. That's why it's bullshit as well. So we're not allowed to offend the students, and it's that is very, very wrong, especially in higher education and especially in art in higher education, because then we form this deluded mentality, group mentality. And anyone that thinks differently from that is then going to feel restricted to expressing their different thoughts or different ideology or paradigms. And at that cost is then going to have a risk to offend. And then people stop taking risks, and creativity and creative thinking and creative playing, music, any art form, it's all about that. It's like going back to what Bowie said, you know, you've got to kind of be dysfunctional as a person to really, you know, and explore who you are artistically. And for that, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And to be vulnerable is also, you know, it's a courage, you know. Definitely. But you've got to set yourself apart from a group mentality. You've got to kind of switch yourself off from something in order to sit inside yourself, in order to come up with your own perspective on something, and then to express that. It's the expression of that, your perception of life. If your life is just going to be encased in a bubble mentality, or a clique, fad, whatever it is, or society, you're just going to hit the ceilings. You know, and it's that, and so it's the oppression of that. We got to please the student. We can't offend them. Fuck that.
Yeah, that's a fair point, man. I'm going to take a slight detour now because I think it's just made me think of something else. When you were in the working in colleges and so on, you were also playing at the same time. You're going to keep your chops up, right?
Well. In order to work in those colleges, you have to keep playing at the same time, you know, because that's one of the things that does attract the students to the college. You know, they see you playing, you know, I was living in London at the time, and you see you playing in Wales, or you see you playing in Yorkshire or around the country or in South. You know, these are your prospective students that come up to you after the gigs, and they shake your hand and they say, you know, what's it like at Trinity, and what's it like at the academy, or, you know. And so, you got to keep playing.
And at the moment, then you've since moved on from you still do teaching?
I do, but just like this.
Right, yeah, it's a bit more 21st century style teaching in that sense, right? It's just become the new normal and all that. Yourself? Or carve a niche out for yourself?
Well, yeah, you got to carve a niche up, I think, you know, anywhere where you are, really. Well, when I was in England, I felt like I was a bit shackled to jazz music. I love jazz music, you know, don't get me wrong, but it's my discipline. But I just want to, you know, I like other different types of music I'd like to explore and get into as well. And so one of the first things that I discovered in Valencia was how multicultural it is. It's different cultures that live here are so rich. Lots of different people from all around the world. South America a lot, and from North America and from the rest of Europe. You know, there's all these different cultures here, and all these different musicians with all these different feels of the beat. And different ways of expressing themselves in the form of the blues, you know. I mean, like there's flamenco music here, which I've never been able to get involved in, but there's flamenco music here. That is blues music, you know. And then that essence is what I'm talking about. That passion, that cry, that the blues, you know. And then there's blues music, and then there's Latin music, and then there's rock music, and there's like funk music, there's soul, there's a pop scene, and there's a jazz scene here. I didn't come here for jazz. I came here to die, to be honest. I came here to die. I came here to kill everything off. After 20 years, I just came here to die and just start afresh, just like musically. And jazz wasn't my main aim at all, to get involved in the jazz scene here. It's a very small jazz scene here. And there's some really nice players in it. But I came here to explore all the other different types of music. And I've had some incredible just times here playing music that I wouldn't have had in the same way playing in England. And that's why I'm here, to have those moments and also to have the space for myself. This place gives me a space of no one sort of expects anything from me to be a certain thing, you know, like they did in England. I don't get that here. And I've got a space here to just sort of refine stuff of myself, of what I'm really into, away from any outside stimulus that can influence me in this or that way. And that combined with these new musical experiences I'm having, it's just allowing me to be me more than ever. And so because of that, a whole different type of writing is coming out. So I'm a composer as well, you know, I love composition. That's a practice to me as much as the saxophone is. So a whole different way of writing is coming out of me that I just like, I'll never have gone there in living in England. Because it's a different environment. You are responsive to your environment.
Exactly, yeah. As I look at the window and it's blowing a gale and it's pouring rain, and as you look at yours and you've got as we saw earlier, a bit of a blue sky. But no, it seems to be a kind of more of a natural transition that you would do this, right? And if you're in an environment where there's all these, there's a kind of North African influence here as well. You're not too far away from that part of the world too, eh? So you've got this whole kind of melting pot of vibrant and somewhat exotic styles and textures and everything.
Totally, yeah. But the other thing is, you asked me about the scene. The scene, it exists here like that because of all these different cultures, the different types of music and genres of music that you find here. It exists here like that because of the people. And the people here, the culture here in Valencia it's just open. Music is part of the fabric of life. It really is here. I can sit here on my balcony and at 2:00 in the morning, I'll have some teenage kids walking in the street or standing on the street corner and they'll start doing this. You know, just singing their heads off, all clapping, you know, for about 20 minutes. And you got not one person hanging out the window going, "Hey, shut up."
Right.
It's just, you know, so people love music here and they feel it. They feel music in a completely different way to how people feel music in England. So the cultural difference is polar opposite. Here, they feel the beat. They want to move.
I think you can see that and hear that in flamenco music itself, though, right? Just that sheer rawness or passion that's connected between the two forces of dance and sound.
And passion.
Exactly,
Yeah.
What are your plans for the year ahead? Since we're now in the middle of January 23, what are your plans for this year, Russ? Have you got some ideas what you would like to do? Or you were telling me just a couple of moments ago about composing and things like that. What?
Yeah, well, my plans so far for musical plans that I've got a rock project. I've written a load of music, like 10 pieces of music for a rock project, which I'd like to get recorded. So that is definitely happening. One of the tracks has been recorded and released already, but it's yeah. I'm at the moment. I'm sort of pursuing that.
Is it rock with vocals? Is it an instrumental project? Is it more of a prog kind of feel to it? Give us a little a snippet.
It's a prog rock thing. There's vocals on it, and it's instrumental as well. It's kind of Are we getting into those time signatures?
No.
Oh, well, actually, there's one that goes into 7/4.
Right, okay, well, it's not bad.
But I mean, it's
it'd be rude not to. At some point.
Rude not to. Well, yeah, yeah.
You got to keep those drummers on their toes, man.
But yeah, I guess it's just it's rock music that's influenced from our generation, I suppose, and from. I mean, I've kind of leaning on King Crimson and Bowie, and but also like that Manchester feel that came out in the late 80s. That sort of Manchester drumming feel that,
like
bands like the Happy
Smiths or
like the Happy Mondays,
the Happy Mondays or the Stone Roses, this type of
Stone Roses,
Oasis,
Spinal
Carpets, or
stuff, And last year I went to. You get great music festivals here. Great music festivals, really good ones, and all the big acts come here, And last summer I went to a music festival, and I saw Kasabian. It was unbelievable. They were playing live.
Was this after they get rid of the singer? The singer had some personal issues. I can't remember exactly what happened. I think he was a bit right. But they get rid of him. So it's the guitar player that does the singing as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Duties, from what I remember.
Yeah. God, he's really good. He's really, really good. Really great voice. But yeah, it's so I'm exploring that, and I'm getting into that's going to be a definite project for this year. Other than that, I'm just at the moment completely redesigning a new website for myself and putting all my albums out on Spotify and Amazon Music and Apple Music and everywhere, and just sort of like doing all that new promotion stuff.
As I've spoken to other people in this podcast about that very thing, Russ, right? You need all these different strings to your bow today more than ever, right? You need to be a social media, maybe not a social media strategist, but you need to know how it works, or you need to be consistent, or you need to know about clipping things, or there's a whole myriad of stuff.
I know it's
not just music anymore.
No, it's not. It's not just music anymore. It's not just music anymore, though, is it? But music isn't seen the same today as it has done in previous decades.
I think music's never been as disposable as it is today.
That's it. Music nowadays is no different. It's a Tinder exercise for most people in society, and that's a difficult thing. I think this is what we're up against. It's people are. This is the other thing, is like a lot of young musicians nowadays. I see this, not to mention any genre in particular, but they get into music not so much for the depth of it and the soul of what music is, but for some kind of alluring attraction to what got people to any kind of celebrity status. And it's more about that. It's more about the sort of like the plasticness of that and the superficiality of that. And this person is famous and they're a musician, but just fuck the fame aspects of them. Just be into what they're doing musically so much that you want to explore an artistic path, to a journey in that. And then if you get any fame out of that, that's a byproduct. That's the byproduct. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, definitely.
And if you stick to then, and if you reach a period of fame and you're known for doing something, be bold enough to break that away from that audience, because that's what my heroes did. Like John Coltrane, he did My Favorite Things, or Love Supreme, and then he could have just stuck doing that shit, But the next album he did, or a couple of albums after, he's doing something other than that. Same with Bowie, same with Miles Davis, you know. And I love these artists, or Wayne Shorter, Joe Zawinul. You know, it's like, I love the artists that get an audience and go, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore because I feel like I'm going this way. All right, I'm going to lose 75% of my audience. Well, fuck it. This is not why.
Right round you though.
Yeah, it's those kind of artists. It's like they're my heroes, and people seem to have forgotten that. And we sort of
there's also this kind of the way people are managed, or the way people are produced, both in a studio sense and also in a stage sense, right? There's more to lose, as it were, today. Maybe that's the way these musicians are aiming for.
Well, yeah, I mean,
whereas before, maybe more standard musicians, they were there for taking risks, or risks were there to be taken. It was just part of the journey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think, yeah, I think everybody just has a different agenda, and I think it's about being true to yourself, really, more than anything else. You know, I mean, it's all about risk. Being an artist is all about risk. I remember when I had this decision and choice to leave the UK to come to live here in Spain, everything was at risk. And I remember having that thought then, thinking, this is what I do though. Every time I pick the instrument in my mouth and play a solo, I have no idea what the next 4 bars are going to be. That is the risk I'm always taking. You know, improvisation is not about thought then. It's just about simply watching yourself doing something based on something that your subconscious has been able to process. And then your spirit just comes out in a natural way. So any thought then that gets involved, it will hinder that natural sense of being. So don't think, just do. Rationalize it cognitively, sure, but just fucking do. See where it takes you. And so I think if you're always in that place, as much as you can be, your sense of home then resides not in the geographic location of where you are, but in the meaning that you give to things. Because then you're giving a true sense of yourself in the meaning of whatever you're doing artistically, or whatever your profession may be, or life. Because then you have more life then to talk about, because your experience of life then has more ups and downs and fluctuations, because then you're living it. And because you're living it, you have more to feel, deeper to feel, instead of cognitively rationalizing something all the time. And so it's you take more risks in general. It's no different than playing jazz music, but the whole jazz ideology, just put into life, into you. You practice it. And going back to the artists, it's like, you know, David Bowie left England. Everybody thinks David Bowie's very English, but he left England a long, long time. For a long, long time, went to America. But he was always English, you know? And you could feel that in his music. And it didn't matter where he lived. It didn't matter where he lived, because his home, his sense of home, was in the meaning that he gave to his life, in being as true as he could be, expressive as he could be. He explored jazz music, he explored electronica, he explored rock in the different levels of music. He was homogenous to his environment and stimuli. But he kept on exploring himself through the different characters that he'd be portraying as well throughout his life. And it was just like his home, his sense of home, was in the meaning that he gave something. And that's where he found his happiness, instead of somebody finding their happiness through something now in trying to get as many likes as they can get. That's it. You don't find a meaning in looking for happiness. That doesn't work, and that's something that I learned in England as well. You know, that's more prevalent for me to see now in hindsight, because if you just search for happiness in something, you're never going to find it. You're going to get the happiness out of the meaning that you put into something. You're going to be true to life. That's it.
It's a nice segue in there, Russ. Tell us about the piece you played yesterday or the day before. It was a piece you'd composed about one of your teachers. He'd recently passed away.
Oh, yeah, that's my
It
first.
was a really nice piece.
Oh, thank you. That's, no, it's a classic jazz standard called "I Remember You," and I've just, I'm just getting back. I was getting back into playing at the moment and getting back into practicing, and I like jazz standards, like songs, like "I Remember You," "Stella by Starlight," Gershwin tunes, just Cole Porter songs. I love those songs,
They still resonate today, right? With the audience.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Hence the word classic.
And I just, I like that tune, and I was just practicing it. And what I do at the end of a practice session is I usually record myself in some way, audio or video, because to listen to yourself back and to watch yourself back is you're being your own teacher. You can always listen to it. I always listen to everything back that I record at the end of a practice to know what I want and what I need to work on, what I don't want in my playing, everything, And it's like studying yourself. And being honest about it. And so I sometimes get a little video like this, just put it up, just put it up. And just share. A few people like it, And but I did this one for Harry College, who was my first teacher, my saxophone teacher, and very fond memories of him. And he unfortunately passed away last week. And it was a bit of a shock, It was a bit of a shock to hear that. And so...
I think you did him proud, man.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, yeah. He's a good man.
Tell us some of the other habits then you get into when you're in a practice routine. Russ, is it more about working out your kinks as the more you practice, or have you... tell us a little bit. I'll let you answer the question. Rather than me ramble on for 5 minutes about getting to the point, Tell us some good practice routine tips and tricks.
Well, I always practice what I'm going to play. I never practice for the sake of practicing. Practice for the sake of... So I always practice something to play. So, there's times when I don't have as many gigs as I'd like to. And then there's times when I do have gigs. More gigs than I'd like to. And so...
It's just the way of the life of a musician. Right? It's feast or famine, man.
Yeah, it really is. And so... so when there's times when I've got stuff to... I always like to be able to do my absolute best on every single gig that I do, no matter what it is. I've always got to try and find a way of doing something to my highest ability and my best on a performance without knowing that I'm intentionally doing that. But that's the practice that leads up to it, right? So it doesn't matter how many times I've played the same tune or something like that, I'll always look for a different way to approach it, but knowing who I'm playing with as well, because that's sort of always going to affect it. So I'm either always practicing for something that I've got coming up, or if I don't have anything coming up, that's my downtime. I see that as my downtime, and I practice for something that I want to hear myself playing, or I create a project for myself that I'd like to see myself playing in a different way from what I've just done before. So it's always geared towards that in a way. So I'm always practicing what I want to play. That's it, basically. And I'll practice it like really, really anally, like really anally. I'll practice it very, very slow for a very long time. I'll be, combining that practice along with phrasing, sound, tone, velocity, different energy levels, dynamics, and, different interpretations of it, different stylistic interpretations of it. And then so once you start going through those different things, you're going through this whole process of reinforcing shit that you know in your playing, but also at the same time you go through discovering different things, and the things that you then discover, you explore them, and then once you've explored them, then you reinforce it again, and you go around this cycle of discovery, exploration, reinforcing, discovery, exploration, reinforcing. So there's always that in everything that I always do when I pick up my horn and practice. So yeah.
Do you play anything else, Russ?
Well, yeah, I play. I play iwi, an electronic wind instrument, which is like it looks like a plastic clarinet, and it's a synthesizer. It's like a keyboard, but you play it.
Yeah, right.
And I play one of those as well. But I'd say more than anything, my second study instrument is it's composition. You know, it's composition. It's I get as much out of composing than I do out of playing. It's all the same thing. Improvisation is composition sped up, and composition is improvisation slowed down. That's the way how I see it. So whatever you're working on compositionally, you're really working on your understanding of harmony, melody, rhythm placement, counterlines, ensemble understanding, you know, social understanding of the players, in the same way, really, but slowed down in a more studious way, meditative way than when you're practicing improvisation. So it all it links into one. So yeah, but I'm mostly an alto saxophonist. Yeah.
I thought we would just add that bit in there since it is a kind of instrument-related episode. You know, it might be good for people to know what it is you actually play. So.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can edit this bit in somewhere else, or they have to wait to get to 50 minutes in before they find out what this guy plays. We've had a whole near hour and I still don't know what he plays with. So, okay. But such is the nature of podcasting and things like that, man. But thanks for sharing. Or otherwise, but musical guilty pleasure is a good place to start, I find.
Musical guilty pleasure.
It's not really wrong, right? But it's that thing that people might be surprised that you enjoy listening to.
Oh,
if you want to put it in that context, you know, it's not something that you have to hide per se, but it might be more of a surprise musically that. I can give you another question. We can come back to it.
I can't think of a guilty pleasure in, I literally don't know how to answer. I'm stumped. That's amazing. I don't know what's guilty. I don't know what I feel guilty about listening to.
Oh. So that's what I was saying. Maybe not guilty in the sense of it's like a heinous act or anything. Like, you know, it's maybe you're going to go to the bad fire and all that. But it's more of
but it's just like what you close the door. What you know, I don't really want anyone to listen to this.
I think today in a kind of more Spotify-driven world, to choose that, or a streaming sense of the one, your playlists are full of things, right? Or you're suggested things through what you're listening to. And you might.
I just, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, to have a guilty pleasure, that would imply that I care what people think about me or what I listen to. I don't give a shit. But I listen to all sorts, everything from, like I was saying, from Sabian to Charlie Parker to, I love Stravinsky and Copland and Prokofiev and Samuel Barber, you know. I love those composers, really do. But at the same time, I love funk music. You know, I love Miles Davis mid-60s quintet as much as I do anything really. It's all music to me. Music is just music. So anything really.
Let's try the reverse of that or inverse? The opposite? It's Saturday, man. I've used all my vocabulary during the week. Right? So, tell us someone you don't get then. Tell us someone you think there's maybe a bit too much hype behind, or someone you don't get, musically.
I don't think that's very good idea that I mention any names, because I might know them.
It could be genres, for example.
Genres.
There could be, or production techniques, or whatever it is. It's music related.
I think it's anything that is. It doesn't really matter about genre to me, but it's just, I don't know. It's just anything that's sort of passed off as something that is not, And I see that a lot, really, with, I don't know, a younger generation, is that there is incredible amount of PR that goes into something and sold as something that it's not. And you get that in teaching, a lot of teachers, and you get that in the music. There's a lot of spin around music that it's passed off for being something that's hip and new and fresh, and or groundbreaking or in any way, and new this, that, and the other, and it's not. It's basically not. It's just another group with a different production angle and perhaps a lot of money put behind a PR agent, basically, or marketing expert saying, "Look, you give me 1,000 or 2,000, and I'll polish this shit for you. I'll polish the turd." And I think, and it's that anything to do with that, whether it be in engineering, production, whether it be in
it's like there's teams of writers and stuff like that now, or not even just writers, but teams of writers, producers, a musical team right behind an artist, which is not necessarily a new thing, but the way that it's manufactured or the way that it's presented is quite different. It's just dropped a level. It really has. And so I think that affects every genre. It really does. And you see it in all different genres. And it's, it's taking away the substance of the depth of music away in many regards. And my fear lies in the fact that this shit gets forgotten about or just gets put on a shelf, And so I just like music that's real. From the heart.
Real, from the heart.
Heartfelt.
That's it. And I don't want to hear, something that's been overly digitalized to it becoming, to disguise the fact that somebody literally has perhaps some talent, but literally no fucking skill. They haven't worked on it, other than just perhaps their aesthetic appeal more.
Yeah. And
they're using music as a medium for that sort of narcissistic sense of whatever it is.
I think for me personally, there's just on that kind of theme, there seems to be a whole vacuum of good pop music now, or rather, there's not great pop music today. It seems to it's still there, but under a different name or a different guise. I don't really recognise it anymore now. Whether that's just because it's me getting older, but I don't think. Yeah, I am getting older, obviously, right? But I mean, it just doesn't sound like good pop music anymore. Not to my ears, anyway.
Well, I mean, I think in our generation,
maybe we were spoiled. I don't know.
Well, our generation, pop music there were tunes. There was chord progression. The bands had different grooves. They had different feels. It was more exploratory. I mean, I remember pop music in my day. I was born in 75, and I remember it was Kate Bush, or Level 42, or Duran Duran, or, you know, the New Romantics. And then at the same time, you had Earth, Wind and Fire, Kool and the Gang. Michael Jackson was doing his thing with Thriller and building that up. And then
there was a whole ska thing going on as well. Or there was metal was still around, of course.
Metal, and then there's the metal thing,
New
and
wave.
rock, new wave, you know, and it was all these things. And then all of a sudden, the sort of 90s hit, and it all got put into this funnel and turned into a sort of like plastic club music. It went from the disco to the clubs, and the club thing was completely different, and the music then needed to serve a different society. But you also got to understand that music is the reflection of a society. And a society is going to be a reflection of its government.
Right on.
And so, you know, we can't blame people for the way they are being influenced to like or not. And we can't blame the producers as well, or the artists in the first place, wanting to perhaps even sell themselves out in a certain way to earn some money and be liked and to get somewhere in life. It's, you know, we've got to be realistic and take a few steps back and actually see that, you know, music is the reflection of a society and a culture, no matter where you are around the world. And that culture is always going to be influenced by who's ruling that, whether it be a government or its religion, and so it's always going to stretch within that. For me personally, I dig the ones that step out of that mold and go, hey, I'm different. I'm brave enough to be different.
Right.
And stay alive.
Tell us a favourite venue, Russ. A venue you've played at, I'm sure, which there are of many, or a venue where you like to go and see acts, or both, whatever you like.
Where?
Yeah, a favourite venue you've played at, perhaps, or where you've seen
where?
something.
In Valencia?
Yeah, whatever you like, man. UK, US. The choice is yours. I'm sure you've played many a stage, man. That's what I'm saying. You know, but is there a particular favourite? Few places that you enjoy playing?
In Valencia, yeah, definitely. To be honest, I like playing everywhere in Valencia because it's always so welcoming. And you know, there's always a nice audience. There's always a guaranteed audience here, no matter what. It's amazing. And so here, it's difficult to sort of choose where I like playing. And I play different types of music as well, so it's got different connotations. But there's a club here in Valencia called the Black Note, and that's a good vibe. It's a blues and rock bar, and they play all different types of music down there, but you know, funk and stuff.
It's a good hub.
Yeah, it's a good hub. It's a really good hub, and I guess I like playing in places where the vibe is nice. You know, where the vibe is nice and you feel comfortable to relax, just to really play and get stuck in and sweat.
Right, because there might be a misconception amongst non-musicians that the bigger the stage, the better kind of thing, but that's not always necessarily the case. You know, it's as you were just saying, that it resonates with me quite well when you're quite close to the audience, or you know, you're in it together, right? You can see them enjoying it.
Yeah,
see it in the eyes. If they're dancing or they're just standing at the bar having a good time, you can just connect to that feeling.
Yeah, I like those kind of. I love playing in those kind of those venues, and it's interesting that actually because you know, having played, you know, I've over my time, I've played more jazz clubs in, you know, compared to other different types of clubs. I have because and it's very conservative. The people don't dance there, not allowed to. You know, a lot of these places you're not allowed to talk either. You're not allowed to fart or do anything, to be honest. Sometimes you're not allowed to breathe. And so you look at the audience and they all sort of sit there and very conservative. And then, you know, and you're blowing your guts out and you know, going, you know, sweating and everything and all this in front of an audience that's just sat there very conservative and very calmly. And it's like...
Something's missing here, right?
Yeah. That's one of the things that I just wanted to get away from, shrug off, you know. So when I see an audience now and they're all stood up, brilliant, okay, and they're there, brilliant, okay, check, and then they all start moving, and then they all start dancing, and it's like, wow, this is great. It feels like you're giving something. Do you know what I mean? So
you're getting a spontaneous reaction to whatever it is you're performing.
That's it, yeah. And I'm not used to that. I'm still not used to that. I'm still not used to it. And like, I mean, receiving it. It's like every time I receive it, it's like, bloody hell.
That's great, man. I think long may it rain.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's kind of complete opposite experience that I've had. I've always played in pubs or bars, and it's more, well, if there's people in the pub or the bar, it's always a good start, as we were saying. And then as the night goes on and people loosen up a little bit and they're enjoying themselves, and you get that gratification through that, right? That's part of the reason why you do it.
Yeah, you feel like you're serving. You feel like you're doing something right, yeah. Yeah.
You might have had a shitty day, or that person might have had a shitty day, and now you're helping them.
Yeah.
At least for 10, 15 minutes, a couple of hours, whatever it is, you're helping them forget all that bullshit. And just enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
It's a great tool to be able to do, or a great thing to be able to give to others. Russ, tell us a go-to karaoke song. You must have one.
Heroes.
We're going the full version?
Yeah.
Right, you're up there for the 5 minutes. You're like, all right.
Yeah. We could be heroes. Yeah.
Classic. Last question for you then. I've got one more. Let me see. The song, okay, there's a couple of choices. I'm going to try a new question. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try a new one.
All right.
The song that gets me going in the morning, or the song I wish I had written. No pressure.
All right. Oh, God.
I could give you the standard question if that's a bit easier, right? So
all right.
The
thing is, I don't really have a song. I have a tune, a melody. All right, I'll go along with the melody, but I don't really have a song. But all right, this is so typical. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I might not be very normal about this.
No, it's perfectly fine.
All right, the thing that I wish that I'd written was it's this one motive that's never ever left me ever, and it's I think it's the main theme from a piece of music that a composer called Bill Conti wrote for his music of the Grand Canyon.
Bill Conti did the Rocky theme as well.
You know him. Yeah. Right. Well, he wrote a piece of music for the Grand Canyon that I first heard it when I was about 8 years old, and I've always thought, God, I wish I could, if I'd come up with that theme, I wish I'd come up with that theme. It's just beautiful. It's a Copeland-like motive, and it's just incredible. And I don't know why. Of all the pieces of music, I don't know. Sorry.
That's a great answer, man. Because I don't think I've ever heard it. I might have heard it. I'm going to go and listen to it later on, but it might come back to me. But then again, I might never have heard it. So thanks for sharing that, man.
It's really bizarre. Yeah.
Russ, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for sharing your Saturday lunchtime with me.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, thanks. It's been fun.
Before we finish up, and where can we find you online? What's a good place to check out your work?
Well, if you type my full name, Russell Vandenberg, if you type that into your music provider, whatever it is, Spotify or Apple Music, Spotify.
I shall put something. I have to do this now. Everyone does this, so I'll put the links in the box. I'll put the appropriate links in the description for the podcast.
It's at the moment it's there. I'm trying to get people just to listen to my stuff, and it's all very varied as well. It's not It's very varied. One thing's orchestral, the next thing is sort of electronic.
Well,
and
yeah,
the
the
next
one you
thing
showed me with the other day, the one that you recorded in
Yeah.
Valencia, the one with that kind of nice kind of
Yeah.
Spanishy type artwork to it, with the orange and all those kind of shades on it.
Yeah, that's an
that
orchestral.
was really nice. Yeah,
That's an orchestral thing. That's a suite. It's a Valencia sketches. Yeah, that's
that was
that's
it.
an
Yeah,
orchestral. But then, at the same time, there's vastly different stuff on my album playlist, on my album list, whatever it's called. And so it's all very different. It's either sort of like, it's just experimental, I suppose, in a way, but it's jazz based. I wouldn't call it jazz music though.
no,
But it's jazz influence definitely, and it's just a combination of everything that I'm into, and so every album is very, very different.
well, I look forward to sharing that with everyone and pointing them in your direction.
Thank you.
Russ, all the best, man. Cheers.
Thank you.